Welcome to the Real Life Podcast at Hermitage Hills, where we have real honest conversations with real people about topics relevant for today. At Hermitage Hills, we desire to see people experience life change through Jesus Christ. For more information about our church and how you can be a part of the community here, visit hermitagehills.com/connect.
So she goes back to China, and the process began. And how long was that process? I can't remember.
Well, it was real fast for us. It was about 9 months. Normally
Okay.
It takes longer than that, but we had done it before.
Oh, yeah.
And Lindy gets all the credit. She's the master at understanding the process
Right.
and how it works
Right.
and what to do when and how you can do things in parallel. And she's so good at that. So we did it as fast as we possibly could. That was in September of 2016, and we traveled to China in April of 2017 to get her, and we named her Lila.
Her name is Lila.
That's right.
And she's a sweetheart. And I remember since when she came back, and she's coming, her and her other friends.
That's right.
Who also got adopted, and we can't take time today going all that, but other families adopted some of these same children. Now from the same orphanage to the same community.
That's right.
And the same church. I just
carrying on their friendship and
Yes.
carrying on that meaningful relationship.
Yes.
They have, the three of them. We
Yeah.
kind of call them the three amigos sometimes, but yeah, it's just wonderful how God works like that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because your family and you and Lindy are people of faith, people who acknowledge Christ as Savior and Lord. And I know that some folks listening may be there, they may not be there spiritually. But there's a beautiful picture of adoption. It's a great story. It's a beautiful story. It's a story that's continuing with Lila, and me seeing her and getting hugs from her from that first lunch table picture till
That's right.
today. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. But
Yeah, for her to be 8 years old.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. She's
oh,
8
man.
now. It's
Don't
amazing.
make me cry. All right. But there's not only a physical adoption that we understand can happen, and your journey with that, and a lot of folks' journeys with that, but there's a spiritual adoption that we understand that Scripture teaches, that we all have been adopted by God who loves us with an unconditional love. So for you to experience Sam and Lila and their adoptions and your family and all of those things, when you parallel that with your spiritual journey and your spiritual adoption, are there some key points on your spiritual life that through the time and through the months and years you going, wow, I can see those parallels and how that impacts my life? Talk to me about
Certainly.
some of those.
You know, it makes the story of us being created beings and God adopting us into his family.
Yeah.
It makes that so much more real to me. You know, you read about it growing up, and I became a follower of Christ at a young age. And so I've been in church a long time, most of my life. My parents have participated in church and worked at the church and been deacons and all of those things. So being in church is common. But the thing is, you sometimes read Scripture over and over and over again, but the next time you read it, it means something different, right? And in this situation, it's just taught me more the value that I'm his. I'm his. In as much as Lila is my daughter.
Right.
We were not part of creating her, but she is our daughter, and there is no difference, right? She has the same legal everything as our biological son, Gavin, as the same as Sam.
Right.
No difference whatsoever. And so it brings home that realness of what it means to be brought into a family, brought into something, and you matter, and it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your circumstances. I love you, and I meet you where you are, and you are now my own.
Well, that Old Testament word, covenant, right? I'm sure has taken on a deep meaning for you all when David and Jonathan entered into a friendship covenant together. the tradition was they would cut their hands and join hands together, and their blood would mix, and they were in covenant together. But meaning in covenant means everything that's mine is now yours.
That's right.
And everything is yours is now mine. And in our spiritual journeys, there's a blood covenant that Christ shed on the cross for us. And as we join our lives with him, it's incredible to think that everything that Christ has is now ours, and everything I have is now his. Now, obviously, I got the better end of that deal in a big way. But as here you have Sweet, Ruth, and Sam, and they've been adopted into your family. Like you beautifully said, everything we have is now theirs. Everything they had is now ours. But of course, they came from China with next to nothing, I would think.
Clothes on their back, basically.
Yes, yeah. They, and that's like us. What do we bring into this relationship?
Yeah, we have nothing to offer of value. That's right. Yeah. That's right. There's also just the element of love, right? And that's a part of the adoption process. Whether when you're thinking about Christ and how you're adopted in his family, or whether you're a family that looks to adopt a child domestically or internationally, is you might ask yourself a question: how could I possibly love a child that's from somewhere else? Right? And then I run into people all the time that ask the question, well, knowing who I am, knowing what I do, how could God love me? And how could he love me unconditionally? How can he seek after me? How can he want me to constantly be part of his world and lead me and guide me, right? So you have to, tackle that situation if you're going through adoption and come to terms with what that is. But it's the same way if you're coming to Christ, right? You've got to think, why would God love me, and why would he love me unconditionally?
Right.
Knowing all the things I've done, knowing all the things I've thought, knowing all the things that nobody else knows, he still loves me no matter.
Yeah.
That's a powerful picture.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking, I don't know if you had these, but have you ever had to have those conversations with Sam and Lila, who would, I don't know if they're of the age yet to ask you those questions like, I know I belong here. I know you all love me, but do I really? You know what I'm saying? As they grow up and as they get older, and the story of adoption becomes more into their thinking, maybe than as a younger child. I don't know that, but
well, we have had that with Sam. Not so much yet with Lila, but Sam is he's a real intellectual thinker. He's just he analyzes things, and you can just look at him sometimes and tell that he's trying to figure something out mentally. And he's now 10. When we adopted him, he was just shy of 2, and now he turned 10 last month. Wow. Crazy how fast that's been. 8 years since that happened.
Yes.
But he feels that deep loss, right? That I can't understand.
Yeah.
I've not been in that situation like he has.
Yeah.
Or like any other orphan child has had to deal with the fact of, what does this mean for me? And it'll, as you said, it's going to come at different ages. Some kids it may come earlier, others it may be something that 14, 15. But regardless, it's a lifelong struggle for them to come to terms with what does that mean, and in many cases not have any answers to kind of comfort you or look back on. And so you have to figure out,
but
how to
that love that
navigate
you all will have for her consistently.
That's right.
Will make all the difference. June and I have been watching. We've been binging on Netflix this series called Annie with an E. It's a story of Anne of Green Gables. I don't know if you've watched it or seen it, but I recommend it. It's a great series to watch. But she was an orphan, and the storyline through the seasons is how sometimes she should struggle with that, and how it was so important for those who adopted her to let her experience that, walk through that with her, and show that love to her. And of course, it all ends back with her finding some things and giving her some of that. But knowing she's so loved by those who adopted her. Yeah. And I think spiritually, for me, I've had so many people, Aaron, through the years, will share with me, well, Pastor, you just don't know what I've done. You don't know where I've been. You don't know the things I've said. You don't know my thoughts that I've had about God or about life, and I just don't see how God could ever accept me, And so you have to just take them where they are, take them to Scripture, take them to God's unconditional love for everyone, and walk with them for a time. So I think these parallels of this beautiful adoption that your family has experienced on this earthly side, right? Mm-hmm. On this physical side, which is a great story, but how the eternal picture for everyone is that we all have a need, and we can't bring anything to it. We can't earn it. We can't deserve it. There's nothing we can give to it, but it's a free gift that God gives us through Christ, because he loves us and he wants to adopt us into his forever family.
That's right.
I mean, it's so beautiful for Lida and Sam to be in y'all's family now, but that spiritual forever family is an incredible story. So I love the story. And I would say, let me ask you this question. Some folks may be watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, and they're either thinking about adoption, as they may be facing some of the things you and Lindy face, or they may not. But they're considering taking that step in their family to make a difference in a child's life. Are there any steps or things that you would want to say, hey, if I could tell you anything about what you're considering, consider these things? Would there be some things like that you could throw out to them today?
Sure, absolutely. I think a lot of it for us and for everybody, it's a journey, right? And you got to some people want to take baby steps and some people want to take leaps. And I would just say anybody that's anticipating or thinking about or considering adoption, go at your own pace, mm-hmm. right? There are so many different resources that you can plug into to learn about how it works, all the different countries, what's different between international adoptions versus domestic adoptions. Yep. For us, it was just a lot about getting all that information, internalizing it, sitting with it for a little while, having lots of conversations with each other about it. And what we were kind of required to do as part of the adoption process is talk to other families mm-hmm. that have been through that journey, mm-hmm. right? Is mm-hmm. learning what are their struggles, what were their fears, what were their concerns, how did you address those things, and what's it like now on the other side, mm-hmm. right? It can be so fearful to think about, well, I'm going into this process and there's so many things I can't control, which is true. That's how adoption works. There's mm-hmm. a lot of things mm-hmm. you can't control. There's moments of just great highs where you're just excited when you get matched. And then there's lows where things don't go the way you would hope they would go, or paperwork is missing or has to be redone, and there's disappointment.
Longer time.
It takes a long time.
Yeah.
Every emotion will be felt through the process of adoption. But the best thing you can do is learn, discover what it all means, and talk with multiple other people that have been through that process.
Let me dig a little deeper for some people, and that is this. I've come across this. I don't know if I have an answer, and you may say I don't either, but for that couple who may, for whatever reason, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it's reality, and that is you've had a biological child and you've had children by adoption. For some reason, some couples feel like if I go the adoption route, it's like I'm choosing second best. I'm not getting the best, and that's a real honest struggle for some people. It may be even a spiritual battle going on there. I know someone I would respond. I wanted you to respond to a couple who's feeling that. And they may feel guilty because they feel that way. I don't know, but I just heard of that where couples will struggle with that thought that adoption seems to be like the redhead stepchild kind of way to have a family. When I would see it a little bit differently, but I don't know.
I think for so many, it can wind up being one of the only options to extend your family and pour yourself into another person, another human being, and help them grow and learn and just become a, fruitful member of society. I think every couple, if they're dealing with that struggle or any of the other struggles or stigma that go with adoption,
yes,
you just have to talk to people. One, you got to say, I'm having this feeling. And you got to be truthful with yourself that this is how I feel.
Yeah.
I think you got to verbalize that to somebody else, your spouse, a friend, somebody, and say, this is what I'm feeling. And hopefully that's a person that's not going to cast judgment, on you being open about where you're at with that.
Right.
And then just trying to navigate that on your own. To me, it kind of comes back to that notion of how could I love a child that's not my own? But God created adoption. He created it in so many different ways because each one of us are adopted. It is part of His plan. It's part of how it works. And when we all get to heaven, that's the greatest picture of adoption ever seen.
Yeah.
When you look around and you see all the folks that are there, that's the greatest picture in my mind of what it looks like to be adopted.
Yeah.
So for me, we have those fears, we have those concerns, but they melted away when you meet the child. They melted away as you spent time with them, and they are no different to us. Do they look a little bit different than us? Yeah, they're Asian. They're Asian. They look a little bit different, but I think it's a beautiful picture of God's love, and it's one of those things that I love Lila and I love Sam as much as I love Gavin.
Yeah.
And I joke with them one-on-one. They'll ask me, who's your favorite? And I'll say, you're my favorite. And then the other one asks me, am I your favorite? Yes, of course, you're my favorite. And then when they're together, they say, wait a minute, you've told us all you're your favorite. So
yes.
Well, because you are.
Yeah,
that's
individually.
Right. Each of you are. You're
Absolutely.
my favorites, So, it's it can be a difficult journey to navigate for sure. But I think just being comfortable with your feelings, being open about your feelings, mentioning that, talking to other people about their journey and how they went through the process, and surrounding yourself around a support system that can help you through that. Yeah. That to me is the most productive way to walk that process.
So, and you may pass on this, and it's okay. Spouse to spouse, when they're facing infertility or wanting to have children and can't, whatever. Spouse to spouse, any words of compassion and encouragement, because sometimes that could be really stressful and difficult for whoever, one side or the other or both sides or whatever. It's still a struggle when they probably didn't expect it and then found out and then went, well, how do couples, how do spouses, how can you encourage spouses to say, let me encourage you with this, to work through this. And again, you've already said it. So adoption is not second rate. I mean, It's a beautiful picture. If there wasn't a spiritual adoption, then none of us would have hope, right? So, but I guess I'm trying to help those who are listening, watching, maybe who are struggling a little bit with this to walk that road together and know the adversary would love to create division and hurt and all kinds of craziness and blame or whatever, I'm sure. Any words from you to say to couples, hey, I would compassionately, I would say, hey, this is what you could think of, pray through.
Yeah, I would just say you have to have a lot of conversations about it. I think both members, that each person just needs to recognize and understand that it's okay for another person to feel differently about something. It may not be the way you feel, and you may want them to feel differently. And even outside of adoption, people have this problem, right, where I want to have kids, but my spouse doesn't want to have kids. Now what do we do? It's the same kind of situation there. Yeah. You have to talk through that. You have to understand that it's okay the other person feels differently, and you need to be okay with that. Yeah. And you need to not focus so much on how do I change their viewpoint? How do I change them to be like me? Or how do I make them think like me? Or how do I get them on my side? That's not the answer. Yeah. It's walking alongside them, loving them through that situation, and seeing where things turn out. I think at that point, if you're working together and you're communicating and you're open about the struggle and dealing with that with one another.
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years, I think you'll come to a place where you both agree on whatever position you have and how you want to move forward.
Yeah.
And then you can do so in a healthy way, in a partnership way
Yeah.
that's supportive of the other, and not like you're trying to drag somebody into a situation that they're not yet comfortable with doing.
Yeah.
When it comes to adoption and kids in general, you got to be on the same page
Yeah.
about that, because
Oh,
all
yeah.
you're doing is you'll cause a problem later,
Yeah.
right? So you got to be ready to go.
Won't
Both
work
of you.
its way out.
No, it's not going to resolve itself.
No,
It's not just
no.
going to magically
Yeah.
fix itself.
Yeah.
That's right.
Two things I would say is, and you said some of this, but the phrase "listen for understanding," I think is really, really important in all parts of life, but especially in communication between spouse and spouse. Not listen to see how I can argue that.
That's right.
Or get my way heard. But I just want to listen so I understand where you are, where you're coming from. Whether I agree with it or not is not the issue. I just really want to understand you, and I want you to understand me, and then I want us to prayerfully, walk the days together. Now, if the couple is without a relationship to Christ, we would say you should seriously consider that, because He's the Creator who designed us and made us with the passions and desires that we have. And He's the one that's going to lead us through those passions and those desires. And so we would say, man, go there first. See the incredible love that God has for you and adopting you into His family, and then allow you all to work through that together. So I'd say listen with understanding. And then again, as you walk into a relationship to Christ, always remember God's got this. If you're facing infertility, if you're facing this situation, you're trying to think about should we adopt or not, man, God's got this. In His timing, in His way, He's going to see you through it, whatever it is. And His plans are the best plans, and His timing is the best timing. So, hey, man, thanks.
That's right.
I would say on this issue of adoption, I just want to express, I'm not saying this is on you, but I felt like this is a great time to share with our audience this truth, and that is, I know a lot of believers like us are pro-life, and our church is a pro-life church. We don't back down for that. We do everything. We vote our convictions, and we love people where they are, and we'll have conversations with anybody about it. But we are pro-life people, and I think that the church, as it's pro-life, needs to also be proactive. And I want to encourage not only continue our church, but other churches, not only say we believe in life, but we'll even believe in giving solutions to when there's a struggle in life. And adoption for pro-life, to me, is a big answer to that. You have to balance. Not only do we not think abortions should take place, but we should say there's adoptions that.
What's the alternative?
Yeah, there's a place for people to turn to for that mother who says, I just can't keep this child. Well, there's a lot of families who'd love to have that child. So I think it's a great conversation, and I think it's a place a church needs to rise up to the surface and say, it's not the government's problem. The church should rise up. People like you all, people in our church, who'd rise up and say, we'll adopt, as God leads them to do that. And I think that the more believers rise to the surface with that, then that's the answer to the dilemma in some ways that we're facing. But man, thanks so much for spending this time with us on Real Life with your real story and just real impact. And man, I love seeing your kids, Gavin and Sam and Lila. I love seeing your family. I love seeing them growing up in the church. I love their hugs. And I love you guys. Appreciate you telling your story with us today. And we just pray, right? It's been a blessing to some folks that have participated, watched on this podcast. So, hey, thanks for being here, and may you have a great, great day from real life that God has for you. May you experience that through Christ and Christ alone. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Real Life, a ministry of Hermitage Hills. If you'd like to be a part of a community seeking to follow Jesus and experience life change, visit us at hermitagehills.com/connect. You'll also find ways to ask for prayer and how to take the next steps in your faith journey. We'd love to partner with you as you grow in your faith and experience real life.